and welcome to the Generation Logistics podcast. In this episode, we're talking all about driving, from the roles available to implementing new technologies and effectively managing your health and well-being. My name is Hope Ellen, the host of this podcast, and I'm joined by two guests to discuss this topic in more detail. If we can begin by having you say your name and the role that you're currently doing, starting with you.
Hi, I'm Dan, and I look after the Driver Academy for GXO.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Gary, and I'm currently employed as a Class 1 driver at the Wincanton site in Wellingborough.
What does Class 1 driver mean? Oh, we're diving in the deep end here.
It's just a classification they use for distinguishing between the various lorries, basically. Class 1 is articulated, so it will be a separate unit and a trailer, and you marry the two together, and that's primarily what they are. That's a Class 1, and Class 2 would be a rigid vehicle as opposed to articulated.
Talk to me about your route into what you're doing now, Gary.
Mine's been quite a varied route, as in I didn't actually purposely set out to be a lorry driver. I actually started my career as a car mechanic, French polisher, and I worked in a clothing factory, so all sorts. So I, cut a long story short, I went to work for a builder's merchants after working as a car mechanic, and gradually worked my way through, and sort of as a promotion they said, look, we'll pay for your HGV and put you through it. So I was driving crane lorries for a builder's merchants around London for quite a number of years, and then I progressed to working in the office, and then on to be a branch manager for the same company. So I worked for the same company for approximately 28 years throughout that career. So yeah, and then I left or had a change of career and went as a site manager for a construction company, and then took redundancy, and then kind of was a bit of a predicament as what to do next. And then I decided, well, I still have my current HGV, and I saw everywhere advertisements for, they were really looking for HGV drivers. So I thought, well, actually, I used to do that. So I returned to driving, and I've been doing it ever since, actually. So it's about 2 years now. I've returned to driving and still enjoying it. So it's been great.
So you mentioned there how an employer gave you the opportunity to get your HGV licence. Is that normally what happens?
It depends on the company. A lot of companies will do that. They will offer like an incentive, basically, to further your career or change career. So if you've done well within the company, they will pay for your Class 1 or Class 2 licence, whichever vehicle they operate. So yeah, there are a number of companies that can do that. From what I can gather, there's a change now where, because of the shortage, they're trying to encourage more people into driving vacancies. So yeah, a lot of the companies are now offering that opportunity for people.
And would you need a basic driving licence before you can get a role, or is that something that they offer too?
You do need a car licence before you can go into HGV, and exactly like Gary said, you can now go straight from car licence to Class 1 or CE without the need to do Class 2 first. So you must have your car licence first before you do your LGV, but the government has made it a simpler process. Yeah.
And that information will be on the Generation Logistics website, won't it? So Dan, coming over to you then, tell me about the route to where you are now.
Yeah, so it's quite similar, varied, if I'm honest, in the sense of what we've been talking about with Gary. But I started out, when I left school, I worked in estate agents for a little while, and my family are all historically drivers. And I thought maybe it's not for me, but I was offered a role at the age of 21 to work for my family business. I looked at what I was going to be offered to be paid, and I thought, I'll give it a shot. And then, let's see, probably 15 years later, I was still doing it. In 2016, I was offered a role to be a driver trainer on a site for a company that I worked for at the time, and then my working life changed completely. So I started to work in driver development, driver CPC programming. Then I became a regional training manager, where I was floating around giving other drivers within the business training on different skills that you need for this type of job. And then in the last 2 years, I was given a great opportunity to become the driver academy manager for GXO, where I look after 4 different academies around the UK. We have our own vehicles, instructors, where we train people, as we've been talking about, right from a car licence, from a completely different role it might be that they were working as warehouse operatives or office administration or even operations managers like we've been talking about. That role, that opportunity is given to all within our business to come through our academy to then drive LGVs.
Would you say your role is rewarding?
I absolutely would, actually. Yeah, I think it's a very satisfying role. You do find yourself becoming very invested in the individuals that we work with, because it's not just a name on a piece of paper. We've got 4 academies that I've talked about, but I know the instructors very well. We know the individuals that get put through to the training well. We get to know them as they're doing their pre-practical training process. And the feeling that you get when they pass and you've given these people an opportunity to do something different is really fantastic, to be honest with you. And it's something that the determination that they've got and the effort that they've put in, sort of married up with the training that we can give them, it really is satisfying. And it hasn't really stopped. So when I hear of an individual that's passed and we've got a new chance for a new role, driving a truck, it's a real buzz. Yeah.
You said that when you were younger, you questioned if driving was for you. Why did you question it?
Probably because of how driving was viewed back in sort of the 90s, 80s, 90s, and then early 2000 when I took mine, and the fact that some of my family members were the type of drivers, and you don't have to be like that now, but would go out on a Monday morning and you perhaps wouldn't see them till Saturday because of the type of job that they'd taken on. So they might be European lorry drivers, or where they go from somewhere in the UK, delivering to South Italy and then bring it back, and it takes a long time, where you don't have that work-life balance. But I think that has been addressed in many ways now, where there's that opportunity to still be flexible, to still see your kids grow up, to still be at home of an evening, and have a driving role. So that was probably my hesitation. And thankfully, I didn't ever have to go out and sleep in a lorry 4 or 5 nights a week. I was fortunate enough to have a role where I started in the morning and was back home every evening, eating an evening meal with my wife and kids. So it worked. Yeah.
Gary, as someone who is doing the role, is that true what he's just said there about it being more flexible now?
Very much so. Yeah, I've had quite a long break in between. Probably 10 years of not driving. So I've noticed that quite a significant difference from when I used to drive to how it is now. And there is that flexibility. There's a much better work-life balance, I think, now than there used to be. And plus the way lorry drivers are viewed is slightly differently now than it used to be. It's much better.
So let's touch on the roles available within the kind of sector. Gary, if you tell me about the roles that you know about within driving?
They're so varied. Anything from car transporting to medical waste and medical supplies, through to food distribution, building distribution, specialist loads. So anything from transporting a tank, a train, to a lorry load of shoes or anything. I mean, if you think about it, anything you see in your house, home, anywhere has to be transported at some point, from the place of manufacture to the place of where it's either sold or distributed or installed. Everything has to be transported. So there are so many different roles within transportation alone. And to name but a few, the vehicles as well. There's specialist vehicles, from tanking to sewage to flat loaders for moving large construction vehicles. Like I was saying, to cars, to anything and everything has to be transported at some point. So there is no end of various roles within the distribution industry.
So Gary, you mentioned there different vehicles and different maybe materials that are delivered from point A to point B. Are people paid differently depending on what they're taking and how they're taking it?
Yes, I would. Yes, the pay structure can vary. I don't know what the difference within from the scales, but yes, the roles do vary. Anything from multi-drop vehicles to a single. So if you're taking a wind turbine from say Spain to the southern England, then yes, it would be different from somebody that's doing a multi-drop vehicle. So yeah, there are different pay structures, and that can suit individuals. So they can choose if they do choose to go into the distribution line and driving vehicles, then they can kind of narrow their field down to what suits them more. If they like to do long distance work or multiple drops, say around some of the major cities like London or Manchester or so forth, or out on the road in certain rural districts. So there are a lot of varied roles within driving alone.
So Gary, what initially made you think, oh, I know what I want to do. I want to be a driver?
I've got to be honest, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't fall into it by accident, but I always enjoyed driving from quite an early age. I kind of taught myself to drive. I was working as a car mechanic, as I explained earlier, and I learnt at quite an early age how to manoeuvre a vehicle in a small space. So I never actually drove a car out on the road until one day, I needed to get my driving licence quite quickly, and I was fortunate that I did know how to control a vehicle. And so, that went quite successfully. So, as I was saying, I then went to work for a builder's merchants and working in the yard. And they asked me to go out in a little 7.5-ton vehicle quite late in the evening just to help out a customer. And I'd done it. And one of the guys came along with me, and that was my introduction into driving. So it was to try and help somebody. And I kind of found out, I quite enjoy this. And I went from there. So they said, you've done quite well. Would you like to go for your Class 2 at the time? And I said, yeah, I'd like to do this. And that's how it kind of started from there. So I didn't purposely actually think, right, this is what I want to do in my career and so forth. So but I haven't turned back since, to be fair. I've kind of really enjoyed it, and I've been quite fortunate in the various roles that I've done and the various vehicles I've been lucky enough to drive. So it's been great.
Dan, we know where your kind of early inspiration came from, that family business that you mentioned, but the training side of things, or the educational side, is a little bit different. What piqued your interest there?
Yeah, I think it was learning that new skill. It was something that once you've got a bit of a taste for it, it can be quite exciting to have that freedom as a driver. So the type of role I had when I first started, it was general haulage, which could mean one day I was in central London and the next day we were up in the Yorkshire Dales. So you were seeing a lot of the country, you were meeting different people. But from a training perspective at the time, we had to do two different steps. So from a car to a class C or 2, so in a rigid vehicle. So the type of work I did was a little bit different. And then when you became a class 1 driver or CE, that became more varied, and then we started supporting different contracts which were perhaps more regular work, where it might be food or toys or whatever it might be. So from the training perspective, what also came into play was the driver CPC. What this regular training does is reminds drivers of the basics, but around safety and performance and fuel economy and economic driving, load distribution, load restraints, all these types of subjects that we might take for granted if you've been driving for a long time, but the reminders that you need, that drivers all need, are there, and we can develop the drivers that way. So linked with our driver academy that we do within GXO is we'll take somebody that might have a car license straight to an Arctic, but then they're trained after they've passed their test to be able to focus specifically on a type of vehicle they're driving. They might have a vehicle that carries lots of cages with tail lifts, or lift decks on trailers, whatever it might be. That does need additional training. So we encourage them we nominate them to go onto a 12-week program that develops that newfound skill. So right from when I passed up to now, everybody needs training, and everyone needs that development. However long you've been doing something, it's really key.
So earlier on, Dan, you spoke about the interest in driving possibly came from that family business that you got involved with. But talk to me about the training side of things that came later. Where did the interest for pursuing that come from?
Yeah, that is a good question. So I think I gained quite a lot of experience as a driver, and what we wanted to do, or what becomes apparent, is that when you learn a new skill, there's an opportunity to share that with others. So within the logistics business, driving, LGVs, whatever you want to call it, we have to do something called periodic training, which is driver CPC. So I became a CPC instructor, which is where you share your skills in the classroom environment, or you might have individuals with you to train them on specific bits of equipment. I know we've talked earlier about the different variations within our industry. It could be that you've got a lorry full of cages and you have to unload them on a tail lift, or you've got a vehicle on there that needs to be secured safely, or it might be to do with eco-safe driving, fuel efficiency, all of the things that really matter to us as drivers, but also our employers. So the training side of it comes from bettering our employees or drivers to get the best out of them, to get the best out of the vehicles, and to help them progress in their own, or sort of develop in their own role. So from a training perspective, it has been quite varied, the role that I've had, but always been linked around driving and LGVs, and has been something that it could be right from a classroom full of people to one-on-one training out in the yard, whatever it might be. Yeah.
We spoke about the rewarding factor that you get from your role. Is it wonderful to be able to actually give people advice on something that you've done personally? You've been out there, you know what it's like.
Yeah, it absolutely helps, I think, and sometimes it can be a bit of a two-way thing. If you're training or you're being trained by someone that has done it, I don't want to use the word respect, but there's a bit of an understanding between drivers that have had that experience, where you know perhaps the challenges around London driving, for example, or where you're dealing with cyclists, pedestrians, diversions, low bridges. The list goes on, and they are really challenging. So it can definitely make an impact when you've experienced that yourself. And the way that you share that information is really key, so that the individual is not being talked down to, but actually spoken to, open conversation to get their experience as well. And when we do that, that's when we get a conversation flowing a bit like this, where we can learn from each other. Yeah.
Gary, you used to be a lorry driver, then you went and done other bits and bobs, then you came back. How much had technology changed in that time, and how much did you have to learn?
Oh, quite dramatically, actually. The vehicles themselves are a lot different. I think one thing I had noticed, that it really opened up an opportunity for lots of different people to drive the modern vehicles. When I first started driving, you had to have a kick like a mule, and they were very physical. They were difficult to drive, quite hard work. Now, with the modern day technology involved, and just to touch on a subject that Dan was saying, about the CPC training, I think that was quite useful for me. I noticed from when I stopped driving to now, I never did the CPC training initially, but one of the things that they taught us on the CPC training was kind of like a state of mind, how you need to be when you're driving, especially a very large vehicle. You come across a lot of problems and people cutting up and all the usual road things, but in a large vehicle it can be quite, I think you have an understanding of what that vehicle can do and how much damage it can cause, and it does put a little bit of strain on sometimes. And what the CPC training kind of does, it allows you to be in a certain state of mind where you're calm, things happen and you remain calm, because there's nothing worse than someone cutting you up and you get a bit agitated and you then take that on to the next problem or something that happens on the road. So yes, the training now is so much more beneficial and useful in a way that you can actually take it out and use it on the road on a day-to-day basis, hour by hour, minute by hour, minute. So it just allows you to stay calm, collected, and just because when you're out on the road, there are problems just thrown at you. You've got to think on your feet quite quickly sometimes, especially with the larger vehicles, because they just take so long to manoeuvre, and you're down a particular road and there's nowhere to turn around. So you've got to kind of pre-plan your journey. And the training, I think, really allows you to then look at objectives slightly differently and pre-plan that journey to allow you to deal with those issues as they come along. So yeah, the CPC training, I think, yeah, as you touched on, was really, really helpful for me. And that was the difference between when I initially took my HGV to then when I did my CPC training and got my HGV license back up to modern day, what you call, say, modern day standards. I found that really enlightening, and the new training was it was fantastic. It was really, really great. Long. I did the 5-day course and did all of them in
back
and
to
it
back,
was
35 hours,
and it was during the lockdown as well. So I did mine online. So I was stuck in front of the laptop for 5 days. So, but It was good. It was enlightening, and the guy, the trainers definitely make a difference. I noticed that the guy made it really interesting, and he was a former, I think he was a coach driver initially, but he did a lot of continental work as well on Class 1s, and we kind of traded stories. So yes, like you were saying, his experiences, and I thought actually this guy, yeah, and it just helped.
How academic was that? And if you're someone who's got more of a practical learning style, is there support and help available?
Yes, there is. I think that the training that's you can embark on now allows you to adapt your style of learning. Now, I'm very much hands-on, and I can't learn, well, not so much can't learn, but I find it difficult to learn by someone telling me something. I have to actually then go and do it, and that's when I try to pick. But the training allows you to adapt your style of learning to that. So you're encouraged to learn in a classroom environment, but then you then take that out into a practical experience. So yes, the training is very, very good, very good.
I'd second that, because I think the CPC, driver CPC, have been around since about 2009, and when it first started, it was a lot of classroom, death by PowerPoint, where drivers are sitting there and their eyes are glazing over, because it is 7 hours, it's a long time in a classroom. But what we've tried to do, and what most companies do, is make it something that's more interactive now. You've mentioned being somebody that likes to get hands-on, so we might have breakaways where you can develop a poster around fuel efficiency and safety. Then it's a video might come on about looking for hazards when you're driving through city centres, looking at some of the challenges that we face when we're sharing the roads with cyclists. All of these things make it a more interactive experience as opposed to being bombarded with information. So from a development perspective, we've improved it to allow all different types of minds, abilities to really grasp that training and allow it to be something of benefit, as opposed to perhaps switching off, which is the last thing we want people to do. We want actually to go away from that course and feel like they've learned something that they can put into practice.
You used the term interactive there, which links us back to technology a little bit. How has new technology evolved your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been extremely useful. So thinking about my role as a driver academy manager now, each individual has to train. They have to have a theory. They have to do 2 modules to get their initial driver CPC, which we've been talking about. We can do online training. We can do practical training with videos that will assist you in looking for hazards on the road. So not just the thing, lots of people have got their car licenses and you do the hazard perception. You do have to do that with LGVs, but it's also a theory test that is a little bit more challenging than the car theory test because of what's at stake, really. You know, we're driving around in trucks that can weigh up to 44 tons. They're rolling potential hazardous machines, and we want them to be safe. So technology's helped because it gives them people initial feedback on how they've developed their skills. Questions are asked, you get an immediate answer if they've got it right or wrong. And also the safety devices on the vehicles have made it a lot better. So we've got cameras that will scan, that will give you a warning if there's somebody nearby. If there's a traffic braking in front of you, vehicles nowadays will actually brake for you if as a driver you've been distracted. And as a part of the training that we give our drivers, we teach them how to use that technology to the best of their ability. So make the technology work for them. And it's all about safety as well, really. So technology increases that safety element of every journey that's taken on by any of our drivers, whatever it is that they're doing. So it could be a lot of motorway driving where it's a bit mundane and you might start to look out the window a little bit too much or whatever it might be, but keeping them focused and understanding the risks around it has really helped.
One of the technologies I find personally very useful is the system for monitoring and your actual performance as a driver. Yeah. So I don't know if I can say it, but we use Microlize. So I just find at the end of the day, when I go on my phone and I have a quick look at how my driving was for that day. Yeah. So if I found that, it wasn't that great, or I've had a harsh braking or something. So the Microlize system just analyses the way you've been driving. So harsh acceleration, harsh braking, cornering, and it monitors the performance of the vehicle. So the following day, I can adapt my style of driving. But it also helps in the way that I drive, as in it's almost like a calming measure. So as I'm driving along, I'm constantly thinking, well, I need to really monitoring the actual way the road and making sure I'm keeping an eye on vehicles braking, and so that I'm not actually then causing the vehicle to harsh brake. I'm slowing down for the corners to make sure that my cornering speed is slower. So it's helped me as a driver drive a lot calmer, and I find that during the day my day kind of flows a little bit better just by monitoring the way that my performance of driving that vehicle for the day.
Do you find it motivates you a little bit as well because you want to do better than yesterday?
Yeah, you've hit a nail on the head. Yeah, it is a
I'd
bit.
be the
Yeah,
same.
that competitive bit kicks in. So yesterday it was a, I don't know, 1.89 something. Yeah, I need to better that today, and think, yeah, I need to, and I know I've got a B on something. So yeah, tomorrow I want to get an A on that. So yeah, it does. Yeah, it does help in that respect.
When you think of someone driving a lorry, doing your role, you imagine them being by themselves, kind of a lone soldier. Is it a case of you've got a team you can reach out to, you are connected, Gary?
Totally. It's no one person can load the vehicle, drive the vehicle, liaise with the customer. It's a team effort. It's from the guys in the warehouse to the guys, the people in the office. It's just generally, you're just part of a huge, great big machine. And, distribution is about teamwork. One part of it doesn't work without the other part. So yes, you do. We're encouraged to liaise and just ring the office, and sometimes they'll just and again, when we get back, they will then ask how our day was. Is there anything that can be done differently or anything? So yeah, we're encouraged on a daily basis just to liaise with when we get back. There's whoever is on the desk at that particular time, just to make sure that everything went okay. If there was a problem, what was the problem? How can we then work around that? So yeah, it does feel that very much so that you're part of a team, and information that's fed back is then actually someone's there to give an answer or help with something that could possibly cause a problem.
What about the social aspect? Obviously, they're your colleagues, and you probably have a professional relationship, as you've mentioned there. Is there any chance to socialise with these people and spend fun time?
Yeah, I work at a particularly large site, so there are a lot of people, and you don't get to know all of them, but there are quite a few. They do tend to. I've noticed we in Canton do a lot of like charity events and different forms and lots of different things. And I notice at that particular site, they have someone that goes around and puts up a lot of banners and so forth. So like if it's Christmas, Halloween or any particular holiday, they really go into it, and they have like a hog roast, and they encourage everybody to kind of get together at some point. I noticed, with this particular company, I've noticed that they've really put an effort into that, and it's the difference from where I used to work. Similar situation, but it was very much segregated. And what tends to happen is people start blaming people. So a driver would say, well, it wasn't my fault because it wasn't loaded properly. And there's no interaction between the two, where Wincanton do tend to then break those barriers down. It's not them and it's not us, it's all of us. So, yeah, we've noticed there that a lot of effort has been put into getting everybody together, not just as a workplace, but also in social events as well. So if you do want to attend, you can attend, but if not, but you are encouraged to work as a team, everyone together.
When looking at which business to go with, to work for, how can you know what it's going to be like if you don't want a situation like you had, Gary?
I would imagine it'd be quite difficult, to be fair, but one of the signs I would look for is the social aspect of it. So if you were looking at a company and you could see there were a lot of social events, then you kind of get a feeling that's more of a family than just a company that you're just going to work for and your number on a sheet. So that was a kind of giveaway for me that I noticed. I was thinking, they seem to do a lot of social events, and there's a big, like a history of in photos on a wall. So as you walk past it, you can see from when they actually open up that particular distribution centre, and it tracks all the way through to the current day, so that you can see on Christmas, 2020, they celebrated and they did this, and throughout the year these pictures are put on and they're constantly updating them. So it just tells me that they're kind of very much people orientated, as just opposed to just being a business as such. But any business is only as good as the people that work for it, so I think it's quite a good thing, really, to be fair.
It's a very nice little quote there, wasn't it, from Gary? But all about people. Dan, we've obviously discussed that to be successful in this industry, and particularly this role, you need to have a willingness to learn and be adaptable. What other skills do you think you need to possess to be a driver?
Good question. I think you need to be conscientious. I think you need to care, and I think I do refer back to safety quite often, but safety is one of the key things that we focus on within GXO, and that is reflected by the training that we give, and then also the vehicles that we provide, the communication between the team, as we've been talking about here, so paramount. So we're all involved in that aspect of it. So definitely conscientious, definitely someone that cares, and also I suppose somebody that wants to do it. And I think that's, if I think about how we nominate drivers to upskill from that sort of that car license, from a different type of role, that's one of the key questions, and it's explaining what's involved and is it for them, because it might not be for everybody, because we haven't got a checklist that fits every criteria, and not everyone will fit into that window. But if you're a person that likes perhaps the flexibility of a role where you're on your own, you go out, you leave the yard in the morning, and you've got that freedom, as I've talked about before. But also that desire to perform, in the sense that we get deliveries on time, we get them there safely, no damage, all that sort of stuff. It really does count. So having the right personality towards it does definitely make a difference. Sorry.
Yeah, well, one of the things I'd add as well is also, if you were thinking about coming into working for or driving a vehicle, or heavy goods vehicle, one of the things I would say, if you don't think you have the skill, what I've noticed is a lot of people initially were put off by it, but the training that's offered will actually teach you those skills. So even if you don't think it's kind of not for you, I think it's definitely worth giving it a go, because a lot of those skills can be taught. So it's just a case of whether you have the right frame of mind often. If you're willing to learn, then that's all you need. A lot of the other things can be taught along the way. Because I'm still learning. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, well over 30 years, but I still learn things. Then I thought, I didn't know that. And yeah, and again, it's because of the constant training. So we in Canton, we do a lot of training, such as like yourself. So if I notice that I've had an infringement, then they will suggest, look, why did you get that infringement? So we have a discussion about it, an open discussion. And then also say, well, what did you like? They don't say you are going. They just say, look, would you like some retraining? I think, okay, yeah, I would actually. And then I can go off on that particular day and do a little bit of retraining on something. So, yeah, those skills can be developed.
An infringement is a tachograph infringement, isn't it?
Yes, indeed, yeah.
So
if you've made a mistake.
It might be, what could it be? Gone over your brake or speed, or whatever it might be, over a speed limit,
yeah,
potentially.
Yeah. Basically, as a driver, you have, it used to be basically like a round piece of paper, and you had where your speedometer would be, you kind of opened it and put this piece of paper in, but you'd put your name and date and everything on there. Now it's basically like a credit card, and you put that into, because all vehicles, commercial vehicles, have to have a tacho, so it records who's driving it, when they started, all the information on their brakes, both legally, by the FTA, the Freight Transport Association that govern this. All vehicles must be adhered to, and following current legislation. So, yeah, it's quite important that you're fully aware of, But all of these things are taught. So even after so many years, I can make a mistake, and sometimes it could be as simple a fact as I'm travelling up the M1 and there's roadwork, so they've closed all the lay-bys, so I haven't been able to pull over and take my break by my designated time.
Okay.
And that's a simple mistake. But that would be a discussion, and they will then, I will then have a printout, and I would carry that with me to show that on that particular day I went over, but these are the reasons why. So you're not just left. All of these things are, and you're helped, encouraged to make sure, and there's always somebody there. If you're not sure, you can ask. So if you think, I made a mistake here, I'm not sure about it, there's always somebody within the office. You can say, on this particular day, I wasn't sure about this, and they will then pull up that information and tell you exactly what happened and how to kind of avoid that situation in the future.
So that ties in innovation, development, and health and safety, doesn't it? All of those factors are covered in that. You mentioned training and retraining, so I assume I know the answer to this, but with new technologies, do you have to go out and do your own research, Gary, or are you taught if something new comes in?
No, we're taught. I mean, you can do. I mean, you can, like most things nowadays, you can research it and go on and find out. But if anything is introduced via, a government legislation, it's like, no, we're taught thoroughly. Anything is never just thrown at you. There's always a training, anything new, you have to be taught and trained. And even if it's a new vehicle, we will go out in that vehicle and kind of taught and explained what, if anything new has been introduced, then we're fully trained before we're allowed to take that vehicle out on the road.
So Dan, I've heard that these types of roles can be good for neurodivergent individuals. Is that true? And if so, how, what, why, when?
Absolutely, it is true. I think the nature of the business that we're talking about with LGV driving, it can be something that really suits that type of individual well. The reason being, because it can be very structured. It can be something that you know exactly where you are, give or take a little bit of time for traffic and unknown things like that. But you've got a regular start, a regular finish, a regular workplace, a regular vehicle, which you become familiar with. And also, actually, the work itself is something that if you struggle in social environments where there's lots of different people and lots of noise and that sort of thing, you are, as a driver, predominantly you're on your own in that vehicle, where you have a set list of instructions or deliveries to make, and you can do that at your pace as you've been trained to do, and you can really find some satisfaction from it. So I think it would definitely suit somebody that was neurodivergent. Yeah.
Gary, is that freedom and kind of you're trusted to go and complete those tasks? Is that something that you love about your role?
Yes, to be fair. Yeah, it is. Once you leave your centre, once you leave the distribution or or warehouse or whatever, once you cross those gates, you're very much not on your own, but you're your own boss. So you get to make a lot of decisions. And it's one of the differences I noticed, as I was explaining before, I've been a branch manager for a long time, and it's one of the reasons I think I've just realised, when I was a branch manager, head office said you've got to do this and you've got to do that. So I felt more of I think the word is an implementer. They said you've got to do this, and that's what I did. Where the funny thing is, being a lorry driver, I feel more independent than I did as a branch manager. So the freedoms I have during the day to be able to, choose the directions or where I need to go to and how to get there. Yes, it can be tough sometimes. I'm not going to lie, but yeah, there's a lot more freedoms. And once I'm out and I leave those gates, I'm my own boss. I'm in charge of that vehicle, and it's gone are the days where you say, oh, you've got to be there by a certain time. No, I'll get there, to the best of my ability. But those decisions are down to me. And, we're kind of taught that, especially with securing the load and making sure. So, yeah, there's a lot of training involved. So, again, it's tough and you've got to make some big decisions, but not on your own, And, again, there's any time I can pull over, ring the office, say, I'm not sure about this. Could you give me a bit of advice? And there's always somebody there to answer a question. So, yeah, you're never, ever left on your own. But, again, yes, you are kind of out on the road and you're your own boss, very much so.
I think that's a big contrast as well to perhaps, again, thinking about those that we develop within our own business. Somebody that's perhaps been in a warehouse environment, for example, where you're looking at the same four walls, to then go and to be given an opportunity to be out on your own, on the road, different environments, different cities, different deliveries. It can be a real enjoyable experience as opposed to something that's daunting. If they're given the right opportunity, the right training, and they've got the right mindset, it can be a very satisfying role. Yeah.
How do you instill that confidence? Because you took the words out of my mouth there. For some people, it would be fantastic, exciting, brilliant. Yeah. For others, it would be really scary. So as a trainer, how do you say, look, you've got the skills, you can do it?
Really good question. So that's one of my biggest challenges, I think, with managing the academy, is how do we give people that confidence? And I think what it comes from is like we've talked about in this discussion, is giving them the opportunity to actually experience it, sitting behind the steering wheel of an LGV, looking what it's like, and then developing that skill in a fairly close amount of time. But once they've acquired that skill, they've got that pass certificate, not just saying, right, there's a set of keys and off you go, but giving somebody the confidence to be able to make deliveries safely. So what we tend to do is we'll traffic light the deliveries that they might have. So a red might be a central London basement delivery in, I don't know, goodness knows where, the Old Kent Road, let's call it that. and then you might have a green delivery that is Milton Keynes just off the M1 and it's 2 roundabouts and then you're in. Why do we do that? To build up that confidence to somebody like Gary's been driving for 30 years. He would be absolutely fine with going to central London, but someone that's passed 2 weeks ago, would that be fair to that person? Or would they potentially think, oh my goodness, I don't think this is for me, and go back to the previous role? And that's what we want to avoid. So we're always looking for ways to make that development, that progress, a steady one with realistic, achievable goals.
Gary, anything to add?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think I did mine so long ago. I was kind of dropped into it. I passed my HGV on a Friday, and on Monday they went, there's the truck, there's the keys, get it loaded and get it out and delivered, and off you go.
They did with me as well.
Yeah, it's totally different from that now. I think some people will survive that. There is that philosophy of a sink or swim, but it's not for everyone. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a bad driver. It just means that you need a little bit more training. So now, and I've noticed that when I was doing a different kind of role, but when I came back, and they just said, look, you take as long as you need. So when you go out, even when you've done your induction or your training and everything else, you don't go out on your own. You're coupled with a driver. And initially, you're just in the passenger seat. And then after that particular driver's done 1 or 2 drivers, then you swap over. So you're introduced to it quite gradually. So you get a chance actually to build that confidence. So it's not always a case of, is that person confident or not? No, you get a chance to actually build that confidence. So even if you initially set out, oh God, I can't do this, a lot of that is actually taught. And it can be something that is, you don't have to have that initial, yeah, I can do this, bravado. No, you can actually, it can be built in and trained to allow you to then build up to that confidence to be able to then take a large goods vehicle out onto the road and make those deliveries.
Gary, can you talk us through a rough day in your life as a lorry driver?
Yeah, indeed, yeah. The start times can vary. It just depends on what contract and where you're based. So you can have a fixed start time, or you can have a kind of a varying start time. Mine can vary between an hour or 2. So my official start time is 6 o'clock in the morning. So you go in the morning, you clock in, then you go around to the transport office, and then you collect what we call a pack. And the pack is where you're going and what vehicle you're driving for that day. A lot of distribution centres, you will have your permanent vehicle. We operate a system where you could be driving any vehicle. The vehicles are very similar. It's not like they're completely different. They're all very similar, but it's just you don't get your own vehicle. And that suits me. It's not an issue. They're very similar and all the same. So once you get your pack, you then go and find the vehicle, do all your vehicle checks, make sure everything's okay. You've put your tachograph in and made sure everything's okay. Then you go and find the trailer, which means that you've now got your unit, and then you go and find the trailer, couple up the two, and then after you've finished doing everything and you made sure your checks are okay, you're ready to sort of go out and then start making your deliveries. You could have 1 delivery, 5 deliveries, 6 deliveries, or anything up to 10 or 12. I like that. I like the fact that it's it's different, and I don't ask where am I going the next day, because I like to go in and not know.
Like the mystery.
Yeah, it just breaks up the day. It just means that every day is different. I find I don't get into that monotonous cycle. It's different. I like engaging with the people at the stores, I like having a chat. So yeah, I enjoy that various different stores. And again, they're very challenging. Because of the contract we're on, it's going to small stores from anywhere to some of the bigger stores, such as Cambridge, to some of the smaller stores in some of the little villages. So trying to manoeuvre those articulated lorries through lots of villages can be quite challenging, and it's good fun. It really is. And some of the people you meet are great. So there's that side of it as well. You get to meet a lot of people. So yeah, it's not. Some people view it as being very lonely. You're in that cab and you're on your own. You're never on your own, really, to be fair. And with the multiple jobs that we do, you're getting to meet and greet people all day long. So yeah, it's great.
Do you get to go back to the same people if you're delivering, say, the same warehouse or shop or what have you? Do you get a relationship with the client?
Yes, you do. Yeah. It just varies on what contract it is. So you could be running from doing a contract that's almost like shunting. You're going to the same store repeatedly. You might go there sort of 2 or 3 times a week, and other times you might not go back there for a year. So yeah, it just depends on what pack you've got. But yeah, generally I've noticed after a period of time you get to know the stores and you get to know the people at those stores. So you build up a bit of a relationship. So a lot of the stores I sort of roll up and they know to stick the kettle on and I'll drag that, and it is very much like that, yeah.
So you've done your deliveries. Do you then return back to the distribution centre, and are you home in time for tea, or how does it work the rest of your day?
Yeah, I'm home in time for tea every day. So there can be long days. There can be some very short days. So it just depends again on what the pack is. So generally, yes, once you've completed all your deliveries, you then head back to the store, and at this particular contract, it's what they call D-kit. So during the day, you've collected empty cages, so you go back into what they call the D-kit area. You reverse the trailer back onto the D-kit area, D-kit everything, park the vehicle up, and then go back to the office to hand the pack. And at that point, you'll have a conversation with somebody in the office just to make sure everything was okay for that day. So again, it's a case of they'll ask you, oh, is everything okay? If it wasn't, you just say so. You just say, look, it wasn't great today. And they'll say, oh, do you want to come through? You have a quick coffee or a quick chat. You know, you don't have to. You can say, oh, yeah, I could do that, actually. It's been a bit of a crappy day. And then you can go and basically download and just tell them all the nonsense that happened during the day.
All the gossip.
And then literally, and you just sort of go home and then you're not offloading on the family, so to speak. So, yeah, it does help. Yeah, you know, some days are great. You go, yeah, everything, thumbs up, was great. Go home happy. So, yeah, we're quite fortunate. Yeah, I do enjoy. Again, sometimes it can be long journeys. You've got some of the stores on the coast that's a long journey, and other times it could be stores 5 minutes down the road. I like the various, you don't know, just every day's different, and I quite enjoy that.
Imagine when you mentioned those vehicle checks, you are trained on that, but has your early mechanic days helped you with the vehicle checks before you start on your journey?
Yeah, it has actually. Yeah, I used to do a lot of anything from engine rebuilds to bodywork, so it was a general mechanic. So yes, I do tend to look at things and kind of go into a little bit too much detail. But again, it's one of those things you're taught. So when you get the defect sheet and there's a list of everything on there from windscreen, tyres, horns, lights, so you've got to make sure everything is functioning. So you're taught how to check that vehicle. So it's not a case of there's the sheet, you just got to tick it and make sure. No, they will teach you how to inspect a vehicle to make sure it's roadworthy, that that vehicle is safe to take out on the road. And that's a sort of, it's a bit of the training that's done quite religiously. So you'll know it off by second nature. You will literally do that day in, day out, and you won't be allowed out on the road until you've pretty much got that down. But again, it's not like an exam. You're taught, and if you don't get it right first time, then there's more training. Don't get it right second, and you retaught until it's almost like it's a culture, is instinctive. It's not something that it's just like a tick box exercise. It's very much instilled within a driver, to the point where I even look at my car slightly different. So when I'm at home, before I go out, I have a quick check around the car, make sure everything's okay. So yeah, it's pretty much instilled. So it's second nature.
So Dan, coming over to you, what does GXO do to ensure this culture of well-being?
It's absolutely paramount. So I think one of our core values is people, really, and investing in people, as we've been talking about, giving them opportunity to speak, to, if they have concerns, have somebody that they can approach. Especially in the industry that we're talking about, it can be challenging at times. So how do we look after them? We have an open door policy where whenever needed, somebody can sort of express how they're feeling. And also, we also give people the opportunity to develop and change something about themselves, maybe learn a new skill. We have a fantastic program at GXO called GXO University that we link our driver academy with. I know I've been talking a lot about that because it's my passion. But on that formal platform, there are well-being videos, modules where you can talk about mental health and well-being, because that's a serious thing, especially since COVID has been around. Communicating about how you're feeling, whether you're a 6'4" lorry driver or somebody that works in an office with lots of different people, we all develop that and have challenges in different ways. So communication is key. Regularly meeting with your team and communicating and asking them how people are, or asking individuals how they are, is really important. Well-being is way up there in our priorities. So it might be having a suggestion box or an open communication through email where you can make changes for people. So it could be the type of vehicle, the type of route, the challenges they're facing, at times of day that they're going, whatever it might be. It can be so wide, really, the spectrum of things and challenges that people face in our business. But remembering that just because you work for a company that has got many, many thousands of employees, you matter more than anything else. And I think that really does come across. I think we've used the word family, and how big companies do that is by having that open communication, so that when you go to work, you feel as a part of a team and you feel like you matter. And I think GXO does that really well, because they've prioritised people and well-being as right up there as one of their core values, and it definitely shows. And it's absolutely applicable to drivers. It really is. Yeah.
I love the fact that you've used the word feel, because a lot of big companies have all these aims, or they say that they are this and that, and actually people don't feel that culture. So the fact that you do is really lovely to hear.
Yeah, it's important, isn't it? I think you'd soon, if you didn't feel like you were part of something, or feel like your opinion mattered or how you felt mattered, you'd soon start to look somewhere else, wouldn't you? And that's how we want to progress people and retain people as well, so that they feel like they're a part of something important. We've got lots and lots of different contracts and different types of work within our industry, and it all works together, but only because they've got that value right at the top. So whether you're working in a huge warehouse where you're delivering food to a well-known supermarket, or it's a very small contract delivering, I don't know, specialised glass, for example, the core values of the business are key, where people come first, and it really does matter. Yeah.
So to end our episode today, can you both please give me a bit of advice that you'd give to someone who's wanting to pursue a career in the industry?
Go for it. Just do it. You could be sitting around thinking about it forever, but it's just, I would say, just try it. You'd be really surprised. It's nowhere near how it used to be. I think they've really changed the perceptions of and also the types of people that are now, I mean, where we work, there's anything from ex-bankers. I think, especially in the driving perspective, people had this perception of a driver as being a certain type of person. You know, if you couldn't get a job anywhere else, you could always get a job as a lorry driver. It was always the sort of old saying. But no, it's completely different now. Again, as I was saying, the vehicles alone have just opened up that opportunity for anybody to be able to drive a truck. You don't need to be of a certain build or a certain physique to be able to drive a lorry now. They're not so much easier, but they've just made it more user-friendly, so that the fact that, you know, with the power steering assistance and all the technologies that have now been introduced, it's a lot safer and a lot easier to drive. So it's made driving a lot more pleasurable, especially on the heavy goods vehicle side of things. So I would say to anybody that was stop thinking about it and just do it. It's and there's lots of different avenues into driving now, and different roles within driving. So you could always find something that will suit you. So somebody that's quite happy to go off and see the world, you can go around a continent, to somebody that wants to be home for the family, then yes, you can be home for the family. But yeah, definitely to get out there and give it a go. It's great. It's really good.
Dan, what's your advice?
I would echo those words, really. I think go for it, especially if it's something that you've always wanted to do. The opportunities are there, and it can be a very, very satisfying job. It can be something where you progress and earn more money, which does matter to people. It can be that new skill, and it can be a really, really satisfying, varied and enjoyable change. And I think that's what I from my perspective, I would absolutely echo what Gary said. Go for it, and you won't regret it.
Thank you for joining us for this series of the Generation Logistics podcast. For more insights and case studies, head over to the Generation Logistics website.